So many wild animals like rhinos and elephants are being hunted to the brink of extinction. So, why don't people just farm these animals instead? Imagine a huge industrial-size elephant farm that rears elephants specifically to farm ivory from their tusks. Why isn't this already being done? Surely this would resolve the issue from all angles. The elephant species would no longer be under threat from extinction, and people could buy ivory legally all over the world. Stick around to the end of the video to hear the arguments against farming these animals and why none of them are actually strong enough justifications. Imagine yourself in a small, dilapidated shack, the walls barely holding up against the elements. The hot morning sun warms your home like a sauna, with no escape or relief from it. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, burnt firewood, and the faint aroma of last night's meagre meal that you and your family have eaten every night for over 5 years. Each day is a relentless struggle, living hand to mouth, with no end in sight. You have been living like this your entire life, and it hasn't really bothered you too much. You have been generally quite happy with your life, without hoping for too much more. But now, your children, with their bright eyes and innocent smiles, look up to you with hope. But you have nothing to offer them except dreams that seem forever out of reach. The weight of poverty presses down on you, a constant reminder of the opportunities you never had. Now, imagine this. You hear a whisper, a rumor that a single rhino horn could fetch you a fortune, which would be enough to lift your family out of this relentless cycle of despair. A poaching gang has just arrived in your village, looking to recruit a few extra hands for a few weeks of work, with a big payout on offer. One job with these guys could give you enough to provide your children with the education and opportunities you could only dream of. The thought consumes you. What would you do? Would you risk everything for a chance at a better life, knowing that this one act could change your family's destiny forever? The choice is yours, but the stakes are unimaginably high. This is the desperate reality for so many families. Would you believe me if I told you that poaching, a practice universally condemned and synonymous with the brutal slaughter of majestic creatures, is often seen as the only lifeline for many? A temptation all too powerful to resist. Picture the haunting scenes of these magnificent animals, their lives snuffed out and their bodies desecrated, all for a chance at survival. We all know the devastating impact of poaching, how it threatens to drive nearly half of all animal species to extinction by 2100. Yet it persists. Why? What compels people to continue this destructive path? What makes poaching a rational choice for some, despite its horrific consequences? Well, for some, the answer is about as simple as it gets. Survival. Many who live in areas where economic opportunity is little to none, it's the only option. Poaching is what serves as a means of living for them. And in reality, many people in these situations simply do not share empathy and compassion for these animals, just as a farmer only sees their animals as commodities, and not as the individual sentient beings that they are. So why is this even a thing? Why does illegal wildlife poaching even exist? Where does the demand for these animal parts come from? Well, believe it or not, animal parts, even today, are used in traditional medicine, rituals, and as status symbols. In countries like Vietnam and China, rhino horn is used in traditional medicines, used for things like fever relief, stopping nosebleeds, and even hangover cures, and curing cancer, none of which have any scientific evidence that proves these work in reality, by the way. This traditional medicine industry is also the main driver for the illegal trafficking of pangolins, whose scales are thought to have healing properties for arthritis and inflammation. Outside of traditional medicine, things like elephant ivory are highly sought after for its use in carving, jewelry, and other decorative and aesthetic items that are showcased by rich individuals to project their social status to others. Oh wow, look how rich you are, because you have a dead animal part displayed in your multi-million-dollar apartment, as if the apartment isn't enough. This global demand for wildlife products, which is the core reason why poaching can be such a lucrative business, comes from cultural practices and people's aspirations to show off how rich they are. So, the question remains, who are the real drivers of the poaching industry? Is it the desperate people trying to pull their family out of poverty? Or is it those that seek to buy these animal parts for their own pleasure? The rising demand for wildlife products like elephant ivory, rhino horn, pangolin scales, and tiger parts has turned poaching into a multi-billion-dollar industry, generating profits between $5 and $23 billion each year in an ever-growing black market. Let us not beat around the bush here. Literally, where there is money to be made, no matter how sinister or illegal, there will be humans that seek to collect their share. So, imagine that you accept this invitation to join this poaching gang. The temptation of providing for your family is just too strong to resist. You tell yourself you'll only help out on one hunt, then you'll cash in and leave it behind you. But what happens now? How do these poachers hunt? What is it that you'll be doing? Well, it is likely that you have been invited to join in on the hunt because you possess local knowledge of the land and of typical animal behaviors in your area. Your family has lived in the area for generations, building up a complex understanding that you simply cannot get anywhere else. They want to use your knowledge to help them hunt these precious animals, undetected by any anti-poaching units. One clever tactic used by poachers is creating false trails or using decoys to mislead anti-poaching patrols. They might set up fake tracks or place decoy animals to confuse rangers and divert their attention from real poaching activities. This tactic helps poachers avoid detection and continue their illegal hunting without being caught. So, the time for the hunt has come. You meet the gang in a predetermined location a few hours before sunrise, when the target animals are most vulnerable. And, armed with rifles fitted with silencers, high-tech night vision goggles, GPS devices, a drone and your invaluable local knowledge, you lead the gang into the bush. But, unbeknownst to you, the anti-poaching units are well aware of this gang's tactics and possess the same intimate local knowledge. This is thanks to a local initiative launched a few months ago, aimed at combating the rise in poaching. The initiative focuses on educating local tribes about the importance of wildlife preservation and equipping them with new skills in crafts and carpentry. This helps families earn a living without resorting to aiding poachers. One such initiative, the Ruvuma Elephant Project in Tanzania, has already seen significant success, reducing poaching incidents and fostering a community committed to protecting their natural heritage. In Africa alone, nearly 500 rhinos were killed in 2023. This excessive poaching has pushed the species to the brink of extinction, making it clear that without significant intervention, rhinos may soon disappear from our planet. In response to this crisis, some countries have implemented stringent new laws that empower anti-poaching units to use lethal force against poachers. In Botswana, for example, anti-poaching units are allowed to shoot poaching gangs on sight. These measures aim to deter poaching by increasing the risks for those involved in this illegal activity. On the other hand, leveraging local knowledge can be a powerful tool in conservation efforts. Community members, when educated and engaged, can play a crucial role in reporting illegal hunting activities. A compelling example of this is highlighted in Al Jazeera's story, The Poachers Turned Gamekeepers of Kenya. This article details how former poachers in Kenya are now actively involved in protecting wildlife. These ex-poachers use their intimate understanding of poaching tactics to assist in stopping illegal hunting. By joining conservation efforts, they have transitioned from harming animals to safeguarding them, demonstrating the potential for community-driven conservation initiatives to make a significant impact. Governments and international organizations are implementing various strategies to protect wildlife. By enforcing laws and holding poachers accountable, they aim to curb illegal activities and preserve endangered species. For example, China has historically been the largest consumer of ivory, significantly fueling the illegal poaching of African elephants. The demand for ivory, used in items like carvings, trinkets and chopsticks, has driven the slaughter of around 30,000 elephants annually. In response to this crisis, China implemented a nationwide ban on ivory sales in 2016. This ban led to a significant decrease in ivory demand and a marked decline in poaching rates. By closing major domestic markets for ivory, the law helped disrupt trafficking networks and contributed to a broader global reduction in elephant poaching, offering a more hopeful outlook for the conservation of African elephants. International organizations and governments also work to increase community awareness. They educate people about the problems caused by poaching and the importance of protecting animals. This education helps garner support for laws against illegal wildlife trade and encourages communities to join conservation efforts and report illegal activities. Despite these efforts, challenges remain, especially in areas where corruption is common. Corruption weakens the fight against poaching and hampers efforts to protect endangered species. The problem with directly targeting poachers is that it limits the supply of animal parts to the market. When demand far exceeds supply, prices skyrocket, which only intensifies people's desire to obtain these valuable items. Much of this demand is driven by greed and the desire to appear wealthy by owning such items. This situation is similar to the diamond market, where the supply is strictly controlled to maintain high prices, despite the abundance of diamonds in the world. And so this brings us back to the question at hand. Why don't we just farm these animals for their body parts? Well, I'll tell you now. First of all, there is the ethical argument. Farming these animals for their body parts raises significant ethical concerns. Elephants and rhinos are highly intelligent and social creatures, and farming them for their tusks or horns would involve considerable suffering and exploitation. Seems reasonable, right? But hold on a minute. Don't humans already farm billions of animals that have proven to be both intelligent and social? Is their intelligence or sociability a viable measure of whether or not we accept their exploitation? Based on what happens in the world today, this is not a reasonable argument against farming rhinos or elephants. Next then, the conservation impact. Farming these animals could undermine the conservation efforts. If the market for ivory or rhino horn were to be legitimized through farming, it may increase demand and therefore make it harder to control illegal poaching, which may in turn lead to further declines in wild populations. But again, as long as there is an abundance of elephants and rhinos in the world, whether they be in the wild or not, does it really matter? Isn't it just about not letting them go extinct? And then, finally, the biological and practical challenge of farming these amazing creatures. Both elephants and rhinos have long gestation periods and require extensive space and resources to thrive. Basically, they are pregnant for ages and need loads of land to roam. But so what? Do elephants and rhinos that are kept in zoos not survive? They don't have a lot of space to roam around in, and they seem perfectly happy. And then, the financial returns that elephant farmers would receive would far outweigh the time it takes for an elephant to give birth. And so, there you have it. Let's start farming these animals for their body parts and help meet the demand to help retain cultural practices and people's desire to show off their wealth to others.